Becker. I'm on your DIOA Board of Directors, and I'm Chairman of the Government and Community Relations Committee. We are so pleased to have with us today the Commanding Officer of the Marine Corps Air Station, Colonel Karl Arbogast. Our committee members, Chuck Lurie and Patty Gazelle and Patty Overly, are helping me today. Chuck was going to introduce the Colonel, but he's having some technical difficulties, and if he can't get back on, I'll do his intro for him. Patty Gazelle is going to help ask some questions at the end of the presentation. And Patty Overly, I think you've been explaining some of the tech hints for our viewers. Do you want to do that one more time for the people who have just come in?
One more time. Here we go. All right. So everybody, I want you to take your mouse. Please hover it down at the bottom of your screen. Some controls are going to pop up. On those controls in particular, we're looking for that chat button. If you'll click that, a panel to your right will appear. On that panel, there is an ability for you to chat with us. That's where you're going to get to participate in this meeting and ask questions in real time that Colonel will answer for us, hopefully. So if you will, please go to the blue bar on the direct chat, that triangle just below, just next to the word everybody. Click on that and find my name. I've renamed myself as Questions. So click on Questions, and those questions will come directly to me, and I will be able to ask them as soon as we get to the Q&A portion of the forum today. Other than that, I would love it if you would join me with your mouse all the way to the top right. At the top right, you're going to see a little word, View. On that view, click it, and it gives you the option of Speaker or Gallery. In order to see the Colonel's PowerPoint, which he has prepared a beautiful one, you're going to probably enjoy it better if you click Speaker. That way it will come up largely on your screen or in large form. So click on that, and I think that's all you really need. If you start your questions now, that would be terrific for me, because then I could have a head start on that. Back to you.
Thank you, Patty. And Chuck, we'll give this a go one more time and see if this is a better connection for you. Would you go ahead and introduce our special guest? We've got to get him unmuted there.
I'm working on that. I'm having trouble finding Chuck. There you are, Chuck. Coming in. There you are, Chuck.
Okay, Chuck.
Okay.
Good.
Better.
How's it sounding now?
Very well.
Okay. Becky, are you on? I missed part of it.
Yeah, we're ready for your introduction.
Oh, you're waiting for mine. Okay. Hello, Data. Colonel Karl R. Arbogast assumed command of the United States Marine Corps Air Station, Beaufort, in June of 2020. Prior to arriving at MCAS, he served this country for over 29 years in progressively challenging positions. Colonel Arbogast's past service includes experience as an enlisted Marine rifleman, officer, pilot, member of the Defense Department Joint Staff, and numerous command and staff positions throughout the United States and overseas. If you want to read more on the Colonel's biography, we have it online on the .net. Welcome, Colonel Arbogast.
Thank you for that intro. I appreciate it. Thinking back to 29 years ago when I first started this, it's been a long and fun road, and I'm really looking forward to it. I have been here for about 6 months. I've got 2.5 more years to go, and so far, my experience here in the Beaufort area has been absolutely outstanding. We really enjoyed me and my family really enjoyed the time. The next 2.5 years should be a really good time for us here in Beaufort. But hopefully everyone today can see the slides that are out there. So I'll go ahead and kick off the presentation here. Just a few things that we'll go over about the air station, and some things that are significant to all of us about how long the air station's been here, what we've been doing, where we're going, and some of the really neat things that a lot of folks don't really know about or don't really talk about. So if you can see the slides, great. I'll do my best to keep you updated on which slide I'm looking at. And if you can't see the slides and all you can do is hear my voice, I'll do what I can to make sure you all know what I'm speaking to. Try to be as clear as possible, but I don't intend to read the slides unless there's a question or something specific comes up. So going straight to it, this is what I'm going to talk about today. We'll give a little orientation about where we're at, what our mission is, the history, supported commands, a little bit about MAG 31, which is our major tenant unit here on the in the installation, some of our area of operations, which is kind of the fun part, economic impact, F-35, a little bit about the Townsend bombing range, which is one of the things that I really love to talk about. It's my favorite topic when I give this brief. And then, of course, the best news is we're planning on an air show here at the in the spring. So we'll talk about those things as we kind of go through this. And for those of you that have a question, if there's something you want to talk about, I'm not sure if they're going all by chat, but if something comes up, please go ahead and interrupt me and let me know. We'll take questions at any time. So going to the next slide, on slide 2, or actually it's slide 3, it should be a picture of Merritt Field, an overhead picture, to kind of give you an illustration about where we are, where the installation's at in relation to the local area. So you'll see on the slide, we're about 8 miles away from Parris Island. We're actually on the highest point in Beaufort County. I think the highest elevation here is 37 feet, so it's the biggest hill in the county, which is working out very well for us during hurricane season. But generally, it's also in the center of the field, so it's we've got the high ground here in Beaufort. We're about 4 miles from Laurel Bay Housing and about 45 miles from the brig in Charleston. The Townsend bombing range is actually in Georgia. It's about 70 nautical miles away down to our south, down in the other state, and we're pretty much surrounded by Beaufort County and the community. If you look in the upper left portion of the picture, that it isn't really illustrated there, but that's downtown Beaufort right there. So we're actually very close, as most of you probably know. I don't think Data Island is on this photo, but this is kind of where we are in relation to all things around us. On the next slide, this is our mission statement. So I'll give you a quick second to look at it, and you can read the slide. And you can see in our mission statement, where are we focused? What does this installation really care about? And you see we're providing facilities, ranges, aviation support. We're doing this for tenant commands and other activities. You can see all the things that are written there. But fundamentally, what this installation does as an air station is we support 2MEF, 2nd MAW, and believe it or not, the Joint Force in conducting aviation training for producing pilots and preparing them for combat operations anywhere around the world. And what we do here is a little bit unique. We have a very good training area at Townsend. We have a F-35 squadrons here that are some of the newest ones in the Marine Corps, and we're kind of at the point of the spear of what the Marine Corps is doing in marine aviation. And we have supported the Joint Force as well. Some of you may have seen some of our Facebook posts from something we did earlier in the year. Believe it or not, the Army 75th Ranger Battalion did an air assault to the airfield one very late night and trained right there on the airfield. Some of you probably heard it. Hopefully you didn't. They didn't make a lot of noise, but the fact was we were supporting the Joint Force. They invaded our airfield 2 nights in a row, and it turned out to be very beneficial for them. So our fundamental mission, when it comes down to it, Beaufort supports training for marine aviation and the Joint Force for combat operations. That's really what we do. And it's an imperative that I think most of us understand that, because without this air station and the mission that we're doing, it has a strategic impact across the entire Joint Force. It's pretty significant for us. So how long is for the next slide? On slide 5, the installation has actually been here for a very long time. 1943 is when Beaufort was established as a naval air station. We've been here for about 43 years of presence, and we're going to keep going. You can see on the slide as we introduced new airplanes when the F-18 showed up in 1985. A lot of different squadrons. There were Navy squadrons here at one point before we took on the F-35, and VMFAT 501 was established here in 2014, and we started training F-35 pilots. And you can see there on the bottom of the slide, it talks to when the F-18s depart and when the F-35 is projected to depart. And you'll see those are dates way out into the future. 2028 when the F-18s are done, and by the time 2056 rolls around, we should be done with F-35s and on our way into the next generation fighter. That is a tremendous amount of time of support in the Beaufort area to marine aviation in the Joint Force. We're talking 113 years projected total as it is today, and who knows what's going to happen next. It's very significant, this air station and what it has done for the country. On the next slide, slide 6, our supported commands. Top dog right out of the bat is Marine Aircraft Group 31. Commanding officer over there is a guy named Colonel Sean Basco, is a good friend of mine. We live next to each other, so we're neighbors. We talk all the time. He's the guy that I support primarily on a day-to-day basis for his combat readiness and his operational readiness for his squadrons. Additionally, we support MCRD Parris Island in the Eastern Recruiting Region. So between Parris Island and the Naval Hospital Beaufort, we call ourselves Tri-Command, and we are pretty well integrated between all three of us. The commanding officer Parris Island, General Nethercott, and Captain Batts over at Naval Hospital Beaufort and I talk all the time. We're constantly supporting each other and working together for all our individual missions that are fundamentally intertwined because without each one of them, each one of us is challenged to actually make mission on a daily basis. So we're supporting them as well. We support a combat logistics company, 23. It's a very small unit, but they're here on the installation. A Marine Wing Support Detachment. We support the Consolidated Brig up at Charleston. A Marine Air Control Squadron Detachment, and these are the folks that are doing all the air traffic control here. Not only my folks that are installation personnel, but also that detachment does a lot of training for ATC, so they control the airspace around the airfield. And then, believe it or not, the Army National Guard is here. The 1051st Transportation Company is right outside right next to the main gate, right on the edge of the installation. So far, been here for 6 months. Never talked to anybody from there. Never see them, so I'm not really sure what they do over there, but we support them because they're on the installation. And that's who we primarily work with on a daily basis. For the next slide, slide 7, Marine Aircraft Group 31, they are the folks that are doing F-35 training for the Marine Corps right now. That has a global impact. Technically, we call them the Global Center of Excellence for F-35 training, and they live up to it every day. Right now, they have 6 different squadrons. We still have quite a few F-18s on the flight line over there. There's 2 squadrons of F-18Cs and 2 squadrons of F-18Ds. At present, VMFA 312 and 533 are currently deployed overseas, so there's only 2 units currently on deck. And then we have VMFA T501. That is one of the primary training squadron. And then just recently this year, we stood up VMFA T502, which is the second F-35 training squadron that's currently here on the installation. For me, what these guys do every day, this is my main effort. Marine Aircraft Group 31 is who I am here to support on a daily basis. Where they operate, on next slide, slide 8, this is their area of operations, and you can kind of see big picture about where Beaufort sits within on the coastline between South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia. You can see us there in the middle. You can see Parris Island just to the south of us, the brig up at Charleston, and then down at Savannah and the Townsend bombing range that's down farther to the southwest. Off the coast, you'll see a couple of blue lines with some numbers. It says a whiskey or a W-177, 161, or the 137, 138, 139, 140. Those are warning areas that are out over the water that are training areas for the pilots to launch out of the air station, go out, we call it feet wet, going over the water, and then training in those areas. And those areas are huge. It's one of the reasons why Beaufort is a great place to train. I can launch an airplane off of Beaufort, turn right, go over the water, and they're in a training area in about 5 minutes. And they can do anything and everything they need to do out there over the water, with the exception of dropping bombs. When they need to do that, they go to the Townsend bombing range. And I'll talk a little bit more about the details of that. But the Townsend bombing range is the best range on the East Coast. We can do things in that range that you can't do anyplace else on this coast. Otherwise, you have to go all the way over to California to do that training. So it has become a huge asset for the Marine Corps and the Joint Force to have Townsend bombing range, and we run it out of this installation. On the next slide, you can kind of see a comparison of training ranges that we have out over the coast, those whiskey areas. There's 2 things called restricted areas that are on the West Coast at Nellis Air Force Base and at China Lake. And what you're seeing is a graphic depiction of the size of their airspace. So at Nellis Air Force Base, which is right outside of Vegas, that is where the Air Force does a thing, their version of Top Gun, and an exercise called Red Flag. It's where their weapons and tactics training goes on. That's the airspace that they get. We can fit probably 4 of that amount of airspace off of what we work here in Beaufort. Around Edwards and AS China Lake, another huge area of airspace. We do all kinds of testing and combat training in that base. You can fit 2 of them in our training area off the coast. So fundamentally, what we have is huge compared to what they do on the West Coast. It's a fantastic place for the folks to train at. So on slide 10, I'm going to shift gears a little bit on you and talk a little bit about economic impact for what Beaufort brings. Not only do we do a lot for training for F-35 pilots, but Beaufort has a pretty significant economic impact on South Carolina. You can see the numbers there. We're the number 4 for regional ranking. I think Charleston, Midlands, and Sumter are ahead of us. We have an economic impact of about $2.3 billion, 19,000 jobs supported, $1 billion in labor income. It's a pretty significant number for the region. A little more specific data on South Carolina. The total effect is around $787 million. And of that, $623.5 million of it, on slide 11 is where I'm at, stays in the Beaufort region in Beaufort and Jasper County. This installation has a tremendous impact on Beaufort County on its economics. And I think it's interesting to note that when you look at these numbers, this is about this installation. It doesn't include the impact of Parris Island. So those numbers are actually different. So we have a pretty significant impact on what's going on economically within the county. I think the number comes out to about 80% of what we do is specific to Beaufort County. So on slide 12, got a really interesting picture of the F-35. You can see the bridge right there underneath it. Great photo to give you a kind of a good snapshot of what the F-35 looks like. And on slide, I think we're on slide 13, just a little bit about the Joint Strike Fighter and its program. So there's actually 3 different types of Joint Strike Fighters for the F-35, 3 different variants, and we have 3 services and 8 different partners supporting not only the cost of buying those things, but also training and using those things across the world. And you can see them listed there on the bottom. Beside all, our UK partners definitely support the Italians and Australians. They're all looking at using F-35, and I think we may actually be growing in our number of allies and partners that are flying that particular airplane, or hope to fly the airplane. On slide 14. To give you some idea about this aircraft, I know you all see it flying around, but this is a huge step in capability for marine aviation and for the nation when we talk about a separation between a 4th and a 5th generation fighter. It's got stealth capabilities, really good avionics, integrated avionics, great capabilities for air-to-ground munitions and aircraft survivability. As a single-seat airplane, its ceiling and its speed is phenomenal at 750 knots. I'll tell you, the first time I talked to Colonel Basco after he flew the aircraft, and he was talking about how when he took that thing off, he swore it was going to break his back. It had so much power. It is absolutely an extremely capable machine, and is I would consider it a game changer for marine aviation. It's a very good aircraft. The 3 different variants that you see on the right, between the CTOL, the STOVL, and the CV variant, what you see flying around Beaufort is the STOVL variant. That is a short takeoff and vertical land, which means that it doesn't need a long runway. It can actually hover, and it can also take off vertically if it needs to. Very capable airplane, and you can see the numbers that are there. Very fast airplane, and that's pretty much what you see flying around Beaufort. We will not only have STOVL variants. Eventually, we will get the CV variant as well, but that's a little ways down the road before we'll see that plane here in the airspace over Beaufort. On slide 15, you can kind of see what the plan is related to what the F-35 is going to replace. So if you look on the left side of the slide, for domestic and the UK, the different airplanes that the F-35 is going to replace. For the Air Force, the F-16 and A-10s are supposed to go away and become F-35s. F-18s are going to be, and Harriers are going to become F-35s, and then the GR-7, GR-9 are a couple of UK airplanes that look an awful lot like a Harrier, are going to get replaced by the F-35. All on our international partners, you can see all the different aircraft that they're currently flying. Eventually, all F-35s. This program is huge. It's a greater increased capability, and it seems like a lot of people really want this airplane. Some of the milestones that we had related to F-35, and you can see the dates and the numbers that are there. Bottom line, we started flying F-35s in July of 2014. First pilot started training in September of 2014. And the numbers you see there for 501 pilot production, that is the essence of what I do here. I support MAG 31 in pilot production primarily for F-35 pilots out of 501 and eventually out of 502 while they remain on the installation. We've trained 139 folks, 32 in fiscal year 19, 55 in fiscal year 20, and so far to date, 6 in fiscal year 21. This is the reason why the air station exists right now, is to get F-35 pilots produced on an annual basis so we can build the program for the Marine Corps and get that transition complete for the F-35. So we've got a long ways to go for fiscal year 21. We got a goal that's much higher than 6, and we're well on our way towards getting those guys trained. The Townsend bombing range on slide, I think I'm on slide 17 now. This is actually one of the favorite things I love to talk about, because this range is absolutely phenomenal. It's been around for a long time. Started in World War II. It was controlled by Hunter Air Force Base at one point. Belonged to NAS Glineco, which only way I found anything about that, I had to Google that. Came up on Wikipedia. It hadn't existed for a long time. There's a new airfield there, but it used to belong to them. The air station purchased it in 1991. It used to be along and get ran by the Georgia Air National Guard. And we took it over in 2018 and started working to expand it. I think it started around 5,000 acres. It's now up to 33,000 acres, much larger, and we needed it to be larger so it could support the delivery of precision guided munitions. And that's what makes this range so special and so awesome, is that this is one of the only places on the East Coast where pilots can train with PGMs to drop PGMs and learn how to do that effectively without going to the West Coast. So on slide 18, when this range, Townsend bombing range, originally began, it was designed around World War II ordnance and World War II weapons. Obviously, we've developed a lot of things since then that are much better and more capable. So by having the expanded range, we can now drop laser guided munitions, GPS guided munitions, all of which will stay within the range complex and allows these guys, the pilots here, to train more effectively without having to go all the way to California. What we saw when we did this is we saw this ground training and readiness increase for the F-35s from 28% all the way up to 80 to 100% of their sorties and their training exes could be done down at the Townsend bombing range, and it's only 70 miles away. So for an airplane to go down to drop at that range, taking off from the airfield, if he takes the long route and goes out over the water, we're talking somewhere around 15 to 20 minutes and he's in the range. If he goes direct from the airfield straight to the range right over Savannah, he's there in about 7 minutes. You can't ask for a much better capability, much better range availability for a pilot when he can be in the area to train within about 7 to 15 minutes. It's about perfect for them. So going to slide 19, we'll touch real quickly here on this. I am going to do an air show in 2021. Right now, the dates are April 24th to 25th. We're planning on doing it on that Saturday and Sunday with opening the doors about 9:30. Planning on free admission, and the Blue Angels are coming. It should be a really good time, and we're pushing pretty hard to make this happen in April. We're primarily looking to do this because this has a absolute huge impact on the community. It's a lot of fun, obviously, to do the air show, but this will be one of the biggest events that will occur post or during the COVID environment, And we're really hoping that we'll be very close to being done with this COVID challenge by the time we do this air show. I do have to caveat that I do have to have some criteria as to whether or not I'm going to actually do this or not. Right now, I'm planning for it. I'm going to do everything within my power to do this air show on the 24th and 25th of April. But I am getting questions from my hire as to what our go-no-go criteria is going to be, and what I guess what that criteria will be as to whether or not we'll do it or not. We'll make that decision in March, but fundamentally, I'm going to have a pretty good reason not to do this air show. I would suspect we're still going to have control measures in place, things like masks and some of the social distancing. But I tell you, I really want to do this air show. Pushing pretty hard to do this air show, to put it bluntly. So we're going to do an air show in April, guaranteed. I'm knocking on wood just to make sure we can do this. Okay, so with that said, that was about 20 minutes. I didn't want to spend too much time talking, and I didn't want to open it up for opportunities for questions. So I'll stop talking and open it up for the room. Okay. Can you hear me? I can't hear her. Oh, there you go.
Am I unmuted? There. Okay, thank you. That was absolutely fabulous. So informative. From here, Patty and I are going to be asking some questions. I'm going to be handling the ones coming in from the island. I already have some really good ones.
Okay.
I'm hoping to get some more, y'all. This is your time. Oop, I got 2 new messages. So Patty, you start that off while I decipher these.
Okay, thank you, Colonel. Again, that was really excellent. The first question is one that I think you sort of addressed, but there was a little more specific thought to it.
Okay.
Based on your comments on the strategic importance of the base and also the importance for the Marine Corps and Joint Force training, what do you see as the future of the base evolves? Is there, even with the F-35 training that's going to be taking place here, is there potential consolidation to Cherry Point? Is there potential of any other changes that you may see in the future? You may not have that crystal ball. We were just sort of curious.
Yeah, I would say that any discussion about consolidation has not occurred. There is no indications that I have that Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort and Cherry Point or any of the other air stations that are on the East Coast would consolidate. What I have now is I know that we have a long-term plan that takes us all the way out into the 2030s, where we are transitioning the F-18 squadrons that are here into F-35 squadrons and building and doing a lot of construction on the flight line to support that transition. And that's part of our long-term plan. So Headquarters Marine Corps Aviation puts out a thing they call an AV plan, an aviation plan every year. And the last one I saw shows that we're going to be doing F-35s operations here at some size, some level, to the foreseeable future. That 2056 number that I was talking about on that slide was not arbitrary. That's coming from the long-term planning for the Marine Corps. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. As someone that spent 3 years at Camp Pendleton.
So I've got a few questions here from Frank. Do all civil aircraft now need transponders? How do you manage any of that or any that do not in your airspace? So how do you manage any of those that do not need transponders in your airspace?
Okay, so you're asking me an FAA type question, which is good. You're testing my knowledge today. Thank you. So the answer to the question is general aviation airplanes, not all general aviation need transponders, but it depends on the airspace that they are entering that has requirements for transponders. So every aircraft that enters my airspace is required to have a transponder because we'll need to be able to see where they are, what altitude they're at, when we can control that those airplanes. So if an aircraft comes in that doesn't have a transponder, there may be a handful of them that are just outside of our tower's airspace. If they don't have a transponder, we generally ask them to circumnavigate, as far as I know. But I don't think we've had a lot of instances of that since I've been reported. We do own a tremendous amount of airspace around us and control it. I have controllers that are doing it 24/7 out of our tower and our approach controllers. Even when the airfield's not open, we do own approach control within our controlled airspace. So both civilian and military controllers are working that. So I hope that answers the question.
I think so.
Okay.
Patty, did you have another one?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to combine a few. A number of residents have noticed that there is an increase in flights over the island. Is some of that due to the reconstruction of the runways? And is there a completion date for that? And is it also due to expanded and more training with the F-35s?
Yeah, so most of that was due to the construction itself. So when you saw that original picture, we have two main runways here. The runway 523 was under construction for about a year, and we actually just completed that in December. So that runway is done, and now we are using it more than what we were before. While that runway was under construction, that forced us to use the other runway that brought most of the airplanes closer to Data Island and to downtown Beaufort than what would normally be. So now that it's complete, we're doing more operations around the area to the other runway. So you'll see less airplanes flying over the top of the island and over downtown. As for the increase in number of operations, it really depends upon what we're doing at any particular time. We do about 30,000 operations on a yearly basis, but it really depends upon what training the folks want to do when they do it. We have special events that come next month in February. We're going to do a thing called a divisions tactics course. It's a Marine Divisions tactics course. We'll have more airplanes here for a week, flying a little bit more, and then other weeks we'll have less operations. So it's somewhat of a variable depending upon the needs of the MAG.
Is there a change pre-deployment?
Not right now. There's no change to pre-deployment training. Not that I'm tracking.
Okay, I have a bunch of questions coming in here, and since this is sort of a different language for me, I'm going to go slowly here. Okay, Colonel.
Okay.
If the F-35 is all single seat, are there any IPs on base?
Yes.
Yes.
So the training pipeline for the pilots includes a tremendous amount of simulator time. So we actually have a simulator center on the installation. So before any of those pilots ever actually get in a real aircraft, they have spent hours in the simulator with an instructor to make sure that when they get in the airplane, that they're ready to fly it. As a general rule, between the way fixed wing aviation works is that you will have a student in one airplane and an instructor who is in the other aircraft helping them go through to train on their event. So there's generally always an instructor out there somewhere.
Okay, cool. Okay, so then let me just ask you this question because it feels like it piggybacks on it. William wants to know, how does training differ between the services? Does Marine Corps have a different type of mission than the Air Force?
Yes. So that's an interesting question because you're fundamentally asking me about the mission of the Marine Corps versus the mission of the Air Force. So depending upon the airplane and the specific purpose of the airplane, most of the training will be very similar, but it's changed a little bit in its focus. We train a lot for air to ground. Not all Air Force assets and units have the mission for air to ground. They do have units that are designed specifically for air to air, and that's what they do. Our platforms do both air to air and air to ground, so they have to train to do both mission sets. So there is a slight difference in how they train.
Okay. How long is the training for a F-35 pilot? And my favorite part, are there any female F-35 pilots, or how many are there?
Well, that's a great question. So the training generally takes about a year for them. And I think there's,
One, and then one.
I'm getting some help right now.
One that there's definitely one, and then one that's coming from the Harrier.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a potentially two, one currently in the training pipeline and one who's about to start.
One graduated.
One graduated.
One
Okay.
graduated.
Yep.
Yay, wonderful. I'm going to hand that back to you. That was from Tim, by the way. I'm going
Okay.
to hand that to you, Patty, while I grab a few more. They're coming in.
Colonel, actually, the ones that I have, you've covered so well that I'm trying to think on my feet right now.
Oh,
which is
and I've got
kind of
plenty.
interesting. But let's see. One more quick question. What are the, there is one, what are the average number of flights executed per week? And I think really, as you explained, that can vary depending on the training requirements or mission, up and coming missions.
Yeah, it sure does. I don't really track it by week, but there are days or there are weeks when you can tell that MAG 31 is flying a lot more than what they would in previous weeks. Generally, it's tied to what they want to do for their training. So you'll see surges of a week of flying much more than they did on a previous week. And it really is entirely dependent upon what their goals are and what they need to train to. So things like when we do exercises like MDTC, those are big events when we have more airplanes here. There are sometimes events when they have a focus on air-to-air training, where you'll see a lot more people flying around the airfield as they move out to the whiskey areas. It really depends on the focus.
So staying in line with training, are you able to train pilots to fly the F-35 without prior experience in high performance? I think it's aircraft, ACFT.
Yeah, that's what that short for aircraft. Yes. Well, sure. Absolutely. So there's basically two different ways that you can become an F-35 pilot. You could be a transition from the F-18 or from the Harrier to transition into the F-35, which is a lot of what many of them today, that's what they are. But there's also we call them the second group here of new aviators that go to flight school. They go through basic, primary, basic, intermediate training, and then advanced flight training in the jet, a different jet, before they will transition to the F-35, which, believe it or not, that training pipeline for flight school is really not that much different. If you were being an F-18 pilot, you're still going through primary, intermediate, and advanced flight training. And I think the jet they're training right now is a T-45. They learn to fly in that to fly jets and then become an F-35 pilot. So those are the two different pipelines.
Okay, very cool. All right, so we have a few more, so I'm going to kind of go a little bit faster. Peter asks, how do you manage and mitigate high dB jet sound in the community throughout the day, especially before and after? I think you kind of answered that in that the runway's fixed, etc. But is there any sort of management of sound or?
There is. I mean, there's things that the MAG does try to minimize the amount of noise that they're making. A lot of it is related to flight paths. Some of it is, I call them TTPs, tactics, techniques, procedures, where they're maybe not using all the power available they have to get the airplane off the ground. But you know, it's fun when you actually look at the numbers. The airplane really isn't that much louder than what an F-18 was. It has a tendency to be a little bit louder depending upon the profile. It sounds like it's a little bit louder depending upon the profile that they fly. But generally, we're flying between, the airfield is open between 7 and 2300. So it's open from 7 o'clock all the way up to 11 o'clock at night. Based on the flight paths they fly and how they manage their power is how we kind of control the amount of noise that we produce. But the bottom line is that there's going to be noise. It's part of aviation.
You know what, Colonel? That sounds like freedom to me, so I'm fine
Yes.
with it. So I've got some technical questions here, and then I want to move on to, Bill wants to know, with the radar sensors, are you to fly single aircraft sorties versus 2 ship sorties in operational missions. What are sorties?
So generally, these are still 2 aircraft sorties for operational missions. And I don't know if there's much more I could really answer to that. There's still standard profiles at 2 ship.
Okay, so I'm getting sort of the idea that we have to kind of start closing, but there's so many great questions coming in. How
Fire
does
away.
the F-35 maintenance compare to that for the F-18? So I don't even know what that means. The F-18.
Sure. Yeah.
Numbers on that.
Yeah. So the beauty of it is I get to hear that kind of stuff every time my son comes back from Arizona, because he's an F-35 crew chief and tells me about how hard it is to work on the airplane. It is a somewhat of a maintenance intensive aircraft. And there's some challenges related to what's on the airplane about who can work on what. So I would say that the biggest challenge for maintenance on the airplane really comes down to the fact that it's fairly new. Folks are still working on it. There's still things with parts pipelines and parts availability. But fundamentally, it's not what I would say that much more challenging than working on an F-18.
Okay, great. And then let's see, I really want to get to the air show because I love the air show. I've always adored it. And I love that you're really wanting to push it through, et cetera. I lost that question. For the air shows, what is the separation distance between the aircraft when flying in a tight formation, like the picture you showed in your presentation? That's from Bill. That's cool. I mean, it looks
He wants
like
to know about the distance. Bill wants to know about the distance that the aircraft are. He's talking about the Blue Angels, how far away they are.
Yeah, they look like they're on top of each other.
I don't think I could really answer that because I don't know, but I know it's pretty darn close, maybe 15 feet. It's tight. I don't have that. I don't have that answer. But it is a great picture. That's for darn sure. Yeah, they're pretty close.
It's even cooler in person. I encourage everyone to go. It's really mind-boggling, crazy to see all of that aircraft up there. Last but not least, there's so many questions coming in. I wish we could get to them all. How can DAWTA best support y'all in your efforts to protect and train all these wonderful pilots?
How can the island help us?
DAWTA, what can we do?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you that, and I see this in lots of different places. The biggest way that this installation gets supported by the community is the good relationships that we have in anything that we're doing in community interaction. So there's nothing really specific that you can do. It just comes down to having good relations between us and the island and everybody in Beaufort and Bluffton and the entire county. As long as we're all working together, things are going to be good. And you know, unfortunately, I joined this installation in the middle of a pandemic, so I haven't been doing a lot of community relations type things. But as you know, what I see is that the community relations are absolutely fantastic here. So I can't say do anything other than let's sustain where we are and keep working together as we go forward.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to pass this back. Anybody who's interested in the answer of that distance, Roxanne has typed that into the chat, so check it out. I'm not going to have time to read it. I'm going to pass this back to Becky Sprick, who is going to give us our final minutes. Thank you so much, Colonel.
Well, that was fascinating. I'm sure we can all agree that the F-35 is an amazing airplane. And Colonel Arbogast, we were really honored to have you with us today. And I think I speak for everyone here on DAWTA when I say we're really, really proud of our Marines, and we are so grateful for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, one last announcement. By the way, one question, Roxanne Cheney is a retired Marine colonel, and she looked it up and she says they will be flying 18 inches apart during the Diamond 360 maneuver.
Wow.
That's Close.
That's too close for me.
That's close. But at any rate, we so enjoyed your talk and thank you for making the time for us today. This was really fascinating. And I know that this will be rebroadcast to the island and everybody's going to watch it who was unable to attend live today. One thing before we leave, one last announcement for our Dawtaw viewers. Our next speakers forum will be about the COVID-19 vaccines with Dr. Kurt Gambla on February 11th at 4:30 p.m. So ink that in on your calendar and the flyer will go out on Monday morning. So thanks everybody for attending today. Thanks to my committee for doing such a great job in spite of our little technical glitches. And thanks to all of our viewers for attending. Thank you again, Colonel.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good day.
You. And thank you so much, Dawtaw, for all your wonderful questions.
Yeah, I thought that went very well.
It was fun.
Except for my glitch. That must have been the initial thing that happened when I got on.
Mhm.
Remember you said it was different or something?
Yeah, something different went on with you, but that's okay. You came back in and it was perfect. So I am going to end this meeting formally. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I hope you will check back and see the link we'll send out shortly. Thank you.